What's going on, guys? Hope everyone is doing well. Still kind of under the weather. Been really into my Robitussin and had strep throat, so weather's been pretty crappy here in Illinois. I've been feeling pretty crappy, lost my voice for a few days, which was not fun, but in a way kind of relaxing because it forced me to just lay low, but no fun. Being sick is not good, and health is literally everything. But this video is going to be a little impromptu video, basically laying out a bunch of gear, not to show off, but essentially showing that I have too much, and I'm going to be liquidating and kind of getting rid of a couple things, lightening my load with the drone business. Now, as you see, I even have this guy in front of me, the FPV combo, which I returned, as some of you may know, but I actually won. So I entered a contest with Pilot Institute, just super random. I did get my 107 with them, and they had a contest out of 7,000 people, and I actually was lucky enough to win this guy. So we have the DJI FPV drone, and let's start talking about that first. Why would we want this drone in our life? Well, obviously, if we're into FPV, I got this little CineWhoop Tiny Go just to practice, and it's a lot of fun. So that's a big part of this FPV experience, is having fun, testing your pilot skills and your flying skills. So why would you want this FPV DJI drone first off? In my opinion, it's not necessary. I want it, so I'm going to keep it because it didn't cost me anything. As you know, I did return the original one I bought, and I opted for something else, meaning this Autel, because this Autel Evo 2 Pro 6K is better for me for making money and for what I do with work. So I didn't want to have too much and spend money that I necessarily don't have, but at the same time, this ended up back in my life, so I'm going to rock it and have fun with it. And I think that's a big part of this DJI or the FPV experience, is it's a lot of fun. These things are fast. It's like flying a little Bugatti in the sky. It doesn't almost feel even legal to do, and you get some really cool perspectives and low flying footage and just kind of have fun with it. I think that's the key to FPV, is fun. So those three letters, FPV, to me are synonymous with having fun and FUN. So there's that. Again, if you're an FPV pilot and that's what your focus is, which mine isn't, then it's a whole different thing. You may have a different reason for not liking this FPV DJI drone, but I'm not that into it. So for me, this guy is strictly a cool piece of technology to have. Again, I wouldn't have bought it probably again, but I want it. So for free, $0, I'll take it. So this guy, again, that's all we're going to talk about with the DJI FPV. I'm going to put this guy on the floor, and I want to talk to you about all the rest of this stuff. So what do we have here? We have an Autel Evo 2 Pro 6K. We have, I don't know which one this is, the Mavic 2 Zoom. We have the Mavic 2 Pro, which is obviously the workhorse for many, for the 1-inch sensor kind of thing. We have the new Air 2S, which is now the kind of little battle between the 1-inch sensors with the DJI lineup. We have the old Mavic Air 2. So this is a 1/2-inch sensor, does the 48 megapixel photos, does 4K 60, which doesn't crop, which is kind of nice. I've been flying the Mavic Air 2 a little bit just to do some comparison footage, seeing which one I want to keep, because obviously there'd be no reason to keep, in my opinion, the Mavic Air 2 and the Air 2S. These two drones are far too comparable. So I'm just kind of covering a little bit about what I feel about these drones so far. Again, this is just kind of talking about the pros and cons to each, why you may want one or the other, and hopefully will help clarify some people making their decision if they're in the market to buy a new drone or sell or upgrade or whatever it may be. We have the Mini 2. Now the Mini 2 compared to the Mini 1, to me, is a massive upgrade. With the OcuSync 2.0, the Mini 1, I miss it 0%. It was garbage in my opinion, a cool little drone to start off with the technology under 249 grams. But the Mini 2 is a far superior drone. So the Mini 2, for me, this little drone, I love, and I love having it in my camera bag. To me, it's kind of like, let me see where I have it. So for me, the Mini 2 is kind of comparable. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with this, but this is a Sony RX100 Mark VII. So this thing, super badass little camera. So it's a 1-inch sensor. You got an electronic viewfinder. I mean, the thing is just super cool. I mean, that camera is just awesome. So this thing has a 24 to 200 millimeter optical zoom. So out of this little guy, it's just super, oh, my battery's about to die. But regardless, this little camera is awesome, and it's one of those kind of cameras that if I have in my car at all times, I could basically make money with it if I had to. And this, to me, is kind of the equivalent to the Mini 2 in the drone world. So it's kind of like a point and shoot little sleeper drone to me. So it has a lot of potential and a lot of power, shooting 4K and, you know, having good enough files to do whatever you want with. But again, that to me is a good analogy for this Mini 2, this RX100 Mark 7. Now mind you, this has a 1-inch sensor. So for example, I just printed an 80-inch print for a client. I sold it for $3,000, and that was out of this camera. So this file, 20 megapixel, roughly 1-inch sensor, and where I'm going with that is that's essentially the same type of resolution as the new Air 2S. So if I could sell a $3,000 print, 80-inch print with this guy, guess what? I can do it with this guy. And realistically, I can do that with any of these drones. If you know what you're doing with up-resing the files and doing what you need to do to capture it the right way, you can pretty much print as large as 100 inches without too much of an issue if you know what you're doing and you're knowing how to up-res the files and you're working with a reliable printer who actually has their crap together. So again, Mini 2, definite cool little drone I'm not gonna sell. The Mavic Air 2, half-inch sensor, 48 megapixel files, 4K 60 frames per second without a crop. Cool little drone. It flies really amazing, just like the Air 2S. The Air 2S is OcuSync 3.0. This Mavic Air 2 is OcuSync 2.0, so the connectivity between these two drones are very comparable. I would say the files, so far I've tested some of the footage. I'll put a link below to some of the little videos I've done so far, and the footage looks very comparable. I would say the Air 2S is that much sharper and probably a little bit, just a little bit sharper, I guess a little bit more detail, and you're getting that out of the 1-inch sensor. But again, they're very comparable. The only real strong advantage to the Air 2S, other than maybe the sensors, if you're really into that and needing that, and that's something that is gonna help you out, is going to be the 1-inch sensor for low light, night type shooting. So I've shot some footage in the city at night with the Air 2S, and essentially what it does is, so for example, if I shot this Mavic Air 2 at night, which I've done in the city, the way it looks when I run the denoise plugin is basically how the Air 2S is straight out of the camera. So this is still capable of getting good night footage if you kind of know how to work the footage, but this is just going to be that much better and more effective at low light. But again, if you're not shooting at night and you don't really plan on it, save your money and get the Mavic Air 2. Now, if we have the Air 2S and the Mavic 2 Pro, they're very comparable. Both, well, OcuSync 2.0, OcuSync 3.0, both 1-inch sensors. This is going to have a little bit more going on because we don't have a fixed aperture. The Air 2S has a fixed f2.8 aperture. So this Mavic 2 Pro gives us the ability to go from 2.8 to f11, so we have that much more control. With this, essentially all we have is the ISO and the shutter speed that we can adjust. This, we got a little bit more flexibility, so it's definitely gonna still be more of a pro drone. The cool thing with the Air 2S that I've been realizing, and just kind of some of the stuff I've done so far with it, is that you're getting this power out of something a lot smaller. So this thing may not seem huge, but again, it's a bigger footprint compared to, let me open this guy up, the Air 2S. So when you're just going and flying somewhere, you know, you got basically, they're not that much bigger, but you can see it's just that much larger. So with that being said, having a smaller little drone that's less assuming is kind of cool because it just allows you to do stuff without drawing a lot of attention, and that can be something kind of like having a powerful point and shoot where people don't really realize what you're doing and that you're actually able to capture a great file to actually make money with. So when you start pulling out the bigger drones, it just has more of a visual impact psychologically to a lot of people. And I think that is part of the real, you know, advantage of some of these drones. The Mini 2, everyone's gonna kind of go, wow, how cute this thing is. It's so tiny, but you're actually capturing good footage and you can actually make money with it still. So there's that. So I would say if you do have for my example, the Mavic 2 Pro and the Air 2S, I'm kind of ready to sell this thing because for me, I'm just going to wait for the Mavic 3 or whatever that equivalent is. And I recently bought this Autel Evo 2 Pro, which is a 1-inch sensor. So now I have the 6K, which is a 1-inch sensor, the Mavic 2 Pro, which is a 1-inch sensor, and the Air 2S. So for me, what I'm going to do is sit with the Air 2S, be content with that, focus on the 6K. I have the smart controller coming for the Autel, which is going to be released and shipped probably, I think, the end of May, I want to say. So that will be a cool little thing to see, basically the difference between DJI's smart controller and Autel's new smart controller that's coming out. But the Mavic Air 2 is going to be sold soon, and the Mavic 2 Pro is going to be sold soon. So I'll be stuck with this guy, the zoom. And why would you want a Mavic 2 zoom? Because for me, I get different compressions with different focal lengths. It has a zoom, an optical zoom built in, so if I want to compress a scene or reach in a little bit further without going to a digital zoom at one of these other drones, I can do so. So for me, this drone is really a cool little drone, and I actually like the zoom. I think it's actually a more fun drone and a more versatile drone than the 2 Pro. It's just the way I feel, so whatever that's worth, that's what it is. And now we have this guy, the orange Great Pumpkin. We have the biggest of the drones, and we have the Autel Evo 2 Pro 6K. Now this guy is a workhorse. It has 40-minute battery time. We have a 1-inch sensor. We shoot 6K. The Air 2S does 5.4K. So very comparable, right? But at the same time, we have the ability to change the aperture on this drone, right? So we can go 2.8 to f11 like we could with the Mavic 2 Pro. We have a 1-inch sensor that shoots 10-bit log. We have 6K, not 6K 10-bit, so there's that. So there's kind of pros and cons to all of these drones. But this drone, the biggest plus is that there's no geofencing. So if I have to fly somewhere and have to kind of go and photograph a home, for example, and get some quick footage, I don't necessarily have to go and get Lance authorization and go through all the geofencing kind of workarounds that you do with the other drones. I just go and launch and get my footage and get my shots safely, and that's a huge plus to this drone. So again, I'll always, I think, have an Autel in my tool bag because it allows me to have zero worries about launching and getting in the air, at least for now. So that's a huge thing. And another great plus to this Autel Evo 2 Pro is for a still photographer, the files are really rock star. So this guy, the images look really, really great, and you can do basically anything you want with the files out of this drone. I think it's probably the best still photography drone out there in regards to how the files look out of any of these drones. So that's my opinion, and I'll do a video a little bit more about some of the still photography side of the files on some of these drones. But for now, I'm just letting you know that as far as taking pictures, the Evo 2 Pro 6K rocks and really does kick some ass. So we're gonna fold this guy back up. And this is, again, the largest of the drones, but at the same time, you know, it's not that big. I'm hoping, because I've had some connectivity issues with the actual iPhone 12 Pro Max and their controller, I'm really hoping that their new smart controller is going to help and at least take away some of those connectivity issues that I've had. I've talked to Autel support and they said it should actually remedy it. So I'm hoping their app, the Autel Explorer app, isn't my favorite. I think the DJI Fly app, to me, hands down, with its simplicity, is the best app out there to date. Even better than the DJI Go 4 app. I think the Fly app is really kind of a standard because it's really simplistic, intuitive, and easy to use. I'm not a big fan of their new layout with the shutter speed and everything and the ISO all down in that lower right-hand corner, but that's just nitpicking, and I don't really love the fact that when you slide the shutter speed, it just kind of scrolls without having like little locks in place to different shutter speeds. I just wish it was like 240, 125th or whatever, like some little clicks in place. I just don't like that you just kind of don't know exactly where you're going to land when you're sliding that. Those are little things to me that would make a better user experience with the app, and those are little things that can easily improve in the future with people like us saying something with user feedback. But again, we have different controllers. The Autel controller, for example, this guy, to me, it's not bad, but it's a little clumsy. And I'm just not a huge fan. I don't dislike it, but I don't love it by any means either. I mean, just the way it feels, the phone connects relatively well to it. Ooh, let me see. So this is essentially how it is. You have these little handles, and it doesn't feel bad, but again, the thing is there's a connectivity issue. So a lot of times I'll be making an adjustment and it won't be sticking. It won't be responsive. So Autel is aware of this, and I've been talking back and forth to their engineers, but it's something that really is a pain in the butt when you're trying to fly, because you can't say, for example, change an aperture setting because it won't stick, and you're just kind of fumbling around wondering what's going on. So this guy, maybe 1 out of 10, I would say it's a 6. This guy, which is the Mini 2, the Air 2, and the Air 2S controller, to me, almost as a 10. I really, really enjoy the way this feels. I put little longer anodized sticks on it. So this, to me, I fly the best with. It just feels the best in my hands. I like the position of the phone being up above. Oop, let me get this guy on. So to me, this just has a really balanced feel. And again, balance is pretty much everything in life, as we know. And to me, this is a 10, and it just is a winner chicken dinner. But regardless, this thing is just nice. It has a nice way the cable folds in and compresses down to. So a killer little controller, and this is my preference out of any of them. We have the smart controller. So now we have this guy, Android-based, $750 if you're buying it outright. And I put little anodized sticks on this as well. And it is a nice controller, don't get me wrong. And there's a lot of times that when it's getting warmer here in Illinois, or say when I was in Hawaii, that the phone auto dims. And to me, that is such a huge annoying thing, because I can't physically see the display, and it just dims on you until it cools down. And obviously, if you're in a hot area, it's not going to cool down unless you're in the shade possibly. So for that reason alone, the smart controller comes in to play as being a really cool option for that. So it remedies the bright sunlight and the warm weather because it doesn't auto dim on you, and it can handle. So this guy, I would say 1 out of 10 is probably an 8. Maybe if it had a little better battery life and wasn't Android-based. But again, the Autel controller is Android-based too, so we'll see. And then we have this guy, which is the standard controller for the Mavic 2 Pro and Zoom. And it is what it is. This whole connection down below is kind of fumbly and clumsy, and it works. It's a nice little controller. To me, I use this as a backup controller, and you know, it's fine. It's better to me than the Autel controller, but again, kind of clumsy and just a B kind of controller to use. So I hope that helps. I mean, I just wanted to do this because I kind of was frothing to do some type of video, but these are the drones. The FPV was really a pretty cool surprise. It's just a fun drone to fly, so I'm going to have fun with that, trying to get in the manual mode. I've been playing with this little CineWhoop Tiny Go, super challenging. I suck, but at the same time, I at least been able to fly a little bit outside, and it was a lot easier than flying inside. But the FPV thing, as I said, more novelty for me. Maybe I'll get some B-roll footage on occasion with it, so maybe I can utilize it as a tool in my workflow. But this guy, no geofencing, killer still pictures, awesome company as far as being American-made and having a different experience other than DJI. So for those reasons alone, it's something to consider. And the Autel Evo 2 Pro 6K, I believe, is around $1,600, $1,700 right now. And this guy basically came out to around $1,500 with 2 years of refresh, and by the time you get a case and filters, you're basically up to that same price point. But the batteries on this guy are expensive. They're $200 a piece. I got 4 of them, so you're basically almost at $1,000, which is the batteries alone. And zoom, if you want different compression and focal lengths, is a great thing to have. The 2 Pro, you have 1-inch sensor, a Pro-type drone, variable apertures. So there's that, and obviously you guys probably are really well familiar with the 2 Pro and what it can do. Most pros have this in their camera bag. Pardon my voice. Air 2S is the hottest, latest, greatest, and I would say it flies amazingly well. These 2 drones, I don't know, I haven't flown this guy as much, but I've been flying the Air 2S, and right out of the gate, I feel like I can get like really good 3-4 axis maneuvers with pretty much no effort. It just seems really easy. So again, this drone paired with this controller, I don't use my smart controller that often with this, actually at all. So for me, I still opt for this controller first. Second, third, fourth. But the Autel, I have no option yet, and we'll see what the smart controller is all about. It's going to be huge. I think it's 7.9 inches, 2,000 nit. It's going to be $1,200, expensive, but at the same time, definitely should be a better experience for this Autel. And to me, that's all I'm going to invest in is the controller, the batteries, and this drone. I'm going to sit with it and see how my Autel experience is after all of that. And this guy's going to get sold. So my Air 2, I'm selling for $800 if anyone is interested, but should sell soon anyway. Mini 2, sleeper little drone to keep with you at all times, really unassuming, comparable to maybe a point and shoot like the RX100 Mark 7. And that's it, guys. So I'm hoping this helps. Maybe it gives you a little more clarity on which drone to buy and why. But really, they're all capable in the right hands. So no matter what you do, it's not about the tools, it's about what you can do with the tools. So you can go ahead and rock out an iPhone, as most of you guys well know. So with my iPhone, for example, this little unassuming thing, I probably made the most money as a professional, and my biggest ad campaign was with Apple Computer, and that was with this little guy, an iPhone 6S, I think it was. So even smaller than this phone, the iPhone 12 Pro Max. So there's that, you know, it's what you can do and how you rock out what you have to work with. You don't need all these drones. It's not about having all the equipment to get good shots. If all you have is a Mini 2 or a Mini, rock the thing out. Learn how to get the most out of it and just tweak it. You bracket photos, for example. You take all kinds of different exposures, get creative. So it doesn't mean you need to have all this gear. To me, this is honestly too much. I'm just showing you because this is like peaked out for me, max drones that I kind of need. I mean, maybe if I had an Inspire 2, that's another drone that I probably will buy in the near future, but I'm waiting for the Inspire 3 just because right now they don't have OcuSync 2 or 3 in the Inspire 2, so it's older technology. So if I'm gonna spend $8,000, $9,000, I definitely want it to be refreshed and more current than it is now. But again, that's it, guys. If it helped you out at all, hit the subscribe button, thumbs up button, and for now, peace and aloha. Thanks, guys. And my voice is kind of trash, so